grumpy goats.
High security lockdown.
Poncho!
They're on maximum security.
My buddy. Good boy. First rafter cut.
Yeah, so there's a half lap joint. Come over here and show them. It's not perfect yet. As you can see, it's still got a little bit of chiseling to do on the inside. Or maybe they're just not lined up perfectly. But basically, there's going to be 2 pins, 2 dowels, basically, wooden dowels, like maybe 1 inch thick, through the top, and for half of them,
One there and one there.
yeah, and for half of them, or maybe slightly more than half of the rafters, there's going to be another 4x6 collar tie right here. So we're going to have to mortise and tenon them in there. And for the other half, where the loft will be on this side of the house, the loft joists will act as ties for the rafters to resist the spreading strength of the rafters. These are pretty heavy rafters. There you go. So we got some more old barn wood. Some of this stuff we're definitely going to use for flooring.
Look at this. Look at the generations. This is old wallpaper.
Yeah, so
Somebody
first
else
layer,
put some of
second
their own
layer.
design. I mean, this house is 250 years old. I mean,
I think maybe 220 or something like that.
Still.
But yeah, I mean, this is like, so we're going to use some of this for flooring. Totally going to use it wallpaper side up. Just kidding. But I mean, look at how wide these floorboards are going to be. So what we will probably, 1 second, sorry. We're going to end up probably sanding some off, but the grain is really nice too. I don't know what kind of wood it is. The guy we got it from said some of this stuff. So this is cooler, kind of aged stuff that we'll probably use for paneling. Maybe some of it we'll use for flooring if it's wide enough, like this stuff. It's pretty wide. But he said this stuff might be white fir.
This one above you is wider.
Yeah. Some of it's super wide and super long, but we'll be able to use most of it, I think, for flooring. Anything that we can't use for flooring, we'll use for paneling on the walls.
Or projects.
Or projects, yeah. It's pretty cool old stuff. So we're getting some clouds rolling in. We're going to try to get this unloaded and covered up before we get rained on. And then we have to go pick up another electric fence that we found on Craigslist for super cheap. So we're going to do that. Isn't that right? Another thing that I don't think we've mentioned yet is, well, I mentioned that we're not using any plywood for sheathing. So we're going to do it old school and put boards up. And we have some boards milled, but our good buddy Alex has a mill, and he lives about 40 minutes away from us. And he got paid to take out a bunch of pine from someone's land that the power company cut. And he was like, oh, you guys need boards for your house, right? Come on down and we'll mill a bunch. Gesundheit. So yeah, we went down there last weekend, and he just pounded out all these boards on his mill. Yeah.
We're all making like a chain, and we're stacking wood. His partner, Kaylin, she was doing stickers, and he was cutting out the wood, and Michael would go in and grab some boards, take it off, and it's like, that's how things function. Old school manpower and womanpower.
Right, and yeah, and he brought them all up here with his truck, and then we sat and had some wild caught perch, and it was good, definitely an awesome day. And now we have some beautiful pine boards for some of our ceiling. We have some hemlock boards over here, so we'll use those for sheathing. But I feel like some of these are just too nice to get covered up. Some of them have a nice blue stain too, so that'll be awesome on the ceiling. Yeah, here's some more blue stain. Can't really see it, but yeah, it's gonna be awesome, especially having like uniform like 6-inch or 8-inch boards on the ceiling above the 4x6 rafters. Speaking of rafters, we're short on rafters because some of ours either somehow got punky
or what. I don't know. We only milled them last year, so maybe the trees were already on their way out. But he also milled us some hemlock rafters while we were there. Um, we still need a couple more, so we're gonna be lifting green heavy rafters. But you only gotta do it once, I guess. So we're pretty stoked about that, though.
What are you sitting on?
Our rafters.
So we got some cuts for our rafters done. These are half lap joints, and they're obviously going to meet right here, and they're going to pin. We're going to drill holes for some wooden pegs. So we will use these for rafters. But Shakoi's been planing them with an electric planer, little hand electric planer. This guy right here, and sanding them in spots, so they're going to look nice and newer. Not like that, yeah. So here's them before they're planed, before and after. But before we get those up, we are peeling a cedar log for our loft support pole. So we had that one, but it turns out we ended up cutting it like 5 inches too short somehow, despite cutting on the marks. So mismeasurements. We didn't really end up liking it that much because it was a little curved, which is cool for characteristics, but we just didn't like the way it looked. So we got the straighter one with lots of nubs. I will probably end up sanding those down and smoothing them out a little bit. But first we're going to peel it, and then I'm going to go underneath the house and we're going to secure it. So, yeah. So we've got our carrier pole in, along with this old 4x6 barn beam. So we're undecided if we're gonna keep this little nub or not. It looks kind of cool. And we're starting to lay out some floor joists for the loft. So we made some cuts, basically some seat cuts, so that the joists kind of sit on the top plate, and then they rest right on top of the 4x6. And I'm gonna cut this one a little shorter so they meet, so the seams meet, so they're not overlapping.
and we're gonna lay them out and probably get the loft up today. A little hard to see because of all the shadows and stuff, but it's cool. We're gonna leave this beam just totally old. I'm not gonna sand it or plane it or anything. There's nails in it, so I don't want to plane it for sure. Along with these ones.
Didn't that come out of an old 150-year-old barn from down in Addison County?
Yeah, I think this came out of older, but I think it was 115 years old. I don't remember. It was down in Ripton, and these came out of that house that we were getting a bunch of old barn boards from. So we're gonna probably oil those up, as well as our cool little carrier pole. We'll probably put some kind of poly on that or something.
That took us a while to find. We went through a couple trees to get this one. We had one and it was nice and curved and it had some characteristics we really liked, but it wasn't right. We had another one we cut and then we found out, so we cut it, it was curved. Then finally we found this one, and you can't tell by looking at it, but it's from a huge old cedar. I mean, probably the grandpa or grandma of this land.
Yeah, this is like the very top of it. Not the very very top, but this is pretty close to the top. And yeah, I mean we'll show you the stump later. It was a big stump that was rotted and fallen over, but the tree somehow was still growing. So we didn't feel really that bad cutting it, because even though it was still alive, it was totally knocked over. So it was definitely not a healthy tree. Um, but we'll show you later. It's pretty cool. And this is what some of those floor joists, excuse the mess, not floor joists, but loft joists will look like once they're oiled. We got a little taste of dew this morning, um, and just you can see just where it hit this part is like just super cool looking. I'm not sure what species wood they are. Um, could be cherry, could be, I don't know, could be hemlock too. I'm not sure. It could be American chestnut. You never know.
I'm
Um,
just obsessed with American chestnut.
so we're gonna have another cup of coffee first, and then we're gonna get to work on framing that loft.
What are we doing here?
We are harvesting worm castings. So we have a bunch of worms in buckets, and we fill the buckets with organic matter, stuff like shredded up paper, grass, leaves, stuff that worms eat, and we basically let it sit there for, I don't know, a couple weeks, and then we dump all the stuff through here.
This is all from one bucket. So we sometimes just put it on like this, or we put it in another bucket and we water it down.
Make a tea.
Yep.
So here's another bucket of wormy stuff. And
You can tell they're working on this.
yeah.
Look at that. There they are. Okay guys, here's a secret to our successful gardens and nursery plants. Some goat poop stewing, some worm casting stewing. This can make a couple batches. So my folks came back by, and sometimes we have projects we just don't get to, but it's nice when we have extra hands. So we made this awesome gate, which we took out of that old barn. These are those old barn boards. And we just put a post in, and it gave me just enough extra space. It's really nice, but it keeps the chickens out because we had a really crappy gate and they kicked up all the seed I had planted. So now I'm behind about a week. You can see there's some peas that are popping up. But yeah. So it's a nice garden. Way better gate.
Cool. So we got the loft joists all tacked in, and I sat on them, made sure that they're totally sturdy, and they are, which is fun. So next we're going to start probably tacking some boards up here once it gets a little bit cooler tonight. And we'll probably have to put just another 2x up on this plate because there's a 2-inch seat cut right there. So when we put the floorboards, you know, going perpendicular to the joists, they've got something to rest on all the way over there. So we're pretty happy with it. Actually, we're very happy with it. These boards, these joists look awesome, cool and old, and that beam is cool and old, and it's gonna look cool once there's some boards up there. Kind of be a nice ceiling for our kitchen. And this side of the ceiling is gonna be an open cathedral ceiling, so that'll be really nice to look at too. Slowly but surely making some more progress. So I'm on top of our house. We got the boards for the floor, boards for the loft floor, basically up. None of them are nailed in yet. We're just kind of seeing how they are, and we're going to slide them and move them and all that stuff, and then nail them in and then cut off the overhang, and we'll have a floor. Pretty exciting. We got our loft kind of pretty much done. These boards are still a bit green, so we're not nailing them in yet because they will shrink a little bit, and then there'll be gaps sort of in the floorboards. So we don't want that just yet. So we're gonna let them dry a little bit more in the sun. It rained last night, so that didn't really help, but it looks pretty great. We're pretty excited about our kitchen ceiling and the loft floor. These are the joists are 220 years old. This beam is 115 years old, I think. So we're keeping history alive in our house, and we're pretty happy about that. And it looks really cool. The contrast of the dark joists against the lighter pine boards looks pretty awesome. We were in the whole design phase. It was kind of, I didn't know what we were gonna use. Like we stumbled upon these joists just recently, maybe a month or two ago. Maybe 2 months ago. We've had this barn beam hanging around with a couple other ones. So we didn't know what materials we were going to be using. So the design was a little bit different, and it was much further down. So I can't even touch. I can just barely brush this with my fingers. So it's about 8 feet up, which is awesome. It gives us plenty of headspace, plenty of space to, have storage up here. Maybe put some wooden dowels or something like that with some chains and some boards to, hang pots and pans or stuff like that. We're so stoked about it. It's awesome. It looks beautiful. We really like this nubby support pole too. And another thing I wanted to show you is we're working on our rafters. So I've got to make some bird's mouth cuts down here, but we have some of these lap cuts done, and Shikoi planed them and sanded them, and they look beautiful. So these two, I believe these two are pine, but we also have hemlock rafters and then some old barn beam 4x6s that we're going to use. So basically what we're going to do is we drill 2 holes here. We have some old pegs that we got with some of these barn boards, and I'm pretty sure these are oak pegs. They're super old, so they're tapered more at this end than they are at this end. They're about 1 inch down here, so we're using a 7/8 bit, and we will put these in like that, and then we'll pound them in with a rubber mallet, or we have a big persuader, which is like what they use in timber framing. It's like a giant mallet made out of wood. So we got to fit those in until they fit in snug and they won't go in anymore, and then we'll cut them off at the end because they are way bigger than the 4 inches. So that's not a big deal, but we'll just take a sawzall to them and cut them off. I'm getting the hang of the half lap joints, and this one's not perfect. I think this is my first one, but it's gonna be good enough for holding the roof together. I think I mentioned in another shot, these act as rafter ties too, because the rafters will be just, let's see if I can point them out. So there'll be a rafter at this corner. These are 4 feet on center, so these joists are 24 inches on center, 2 feet. The rafters, since they're so big, will be 4 feet on center. So there'll be one at the corner, one here, so it'll be resting right past this joist. Another one there, right past this joist, and then there'll be one right in the middle of the house. So the ones that are not being tied together with the floor joist of the loft, they'll have a collar tie. So that'll be somewhere like right, maybe not quite halfway, a little bit above halfway, and it'll go across. There'll be 4x6s as well. And we decided we're probably going to dovetail them in, because that's probably a little bit easier than cutting a angled mortise and tenon, because the shoulder, which would be this part of the 4x6 that's coming in, it would have to be angled too. So it would just be a little bit easier for us to do, because we're not expert timber framers. It's just a little bit easier of a cut for us to do. So I'm gonna make the bird's mouth cuts, and then Shikoi and I will probably lift the rafters up here and assemble them in the loft, and maybe try to stand one up so we can get the gable ends on this side framed. Let's go take a look at the loft real quick. Not much to see, but we'll go look at it regardless. So I'm up on the loft right now, and it rained last night, so the boards are still a little wet. The sun's just starting to come out now. It's like 1 o'clock. But yeah, we love the pine boards. We're not going to sand these. We sanded the bottoms of them. We're not going to sand the tops of them yet, because we're going to be all standing up here with dirty boots and stuff. And we're going to have a window on this side of the loft, so I can look at Shikoi doing work in the garden. And then we're probably also going to have a window on that side. You know, the gables, the roof's going to go like that, and then the gable, the gables will be here, and there's going to be probably a window right here that'll fit right between the studs, hopefully. And we have a couple windows kicking around, and we have one that we're thinking about putting up here that doesn't open. It'll just be purely so we can look out this direction while we're up here. This window will open so we can use it for ventilation, and we'll likely have maybe a vent at the very, very peak of this side or the side behind me. We haven't really decided on that yet, but that's probably going to be pretty crucial for insulation, because we're hoping that the house will be pretty tight, and we know other folks who have houses around this size, and they say sometimes it gets a little too warm in the winter, so they have to crack a window or put a vent up. But that's a problem we're looking forward to having, because our last 3 winters have been yurt cold winters. So yeah, the loft is pretty spacious, but we're going to be losing some headspace, you know, towards the ends. But that's why we went with a 12-12 roof pitch. So we'll have plenty of space right here in the middle. I'll be able to put my pants on and not crouch. I can stand straight up and put my pants on, so that's pretty cool.
Or you can not put pants on.
Shakoi says, or I could not put pants on. I'm sure nobody heard that because she talks too quietly. You want to scream that instead? Also, while I'm up here, it's a good chance to get a bird's eye view of this area. So when we moved here, well, when we bought the land, this whole area right here, even this whole path down towards where the goats are now, that was all brambles. Even the house site was pretty brambly. So we mowed and we scythed and we weed whacked and stuff like that until we got some stuff cleared. It basically looked like that right there. We found out that mowing works really well, repeated cutting works really well, and then we got goats and that works really well. So basically what we did for this path down here is we mowed it once last fall. I mean, there were brambles and Shakoi had the lawnmower and she was kind of going and lifting it up and then going down, lifting it up and going down with it. And we did a pretty good job on that. And there's a path even further down there that I brush cut once this spring and then mowed twice. And now it's grass. So the goats basically did that with this whole area. All the brown that you can see was where the brambles were. So this whole, I mean, you can't really see it from here, but this whole alley kind of goes down that way. We had a video of how we're managing the land ecologically with goats, but somehow it got lost. So we're going to try to recreate that in the near future. But yeah, the goats, basically, we have 100 feet of fencing. We've got a little bit more now, but we had 100 feet of fencing, and we basically moved them up. It took them 2 days to do a section of fencing. So basically, like right here was one section. And then what we try to do is, and like I said, I'll talk about this in more detail in another video, but what we do is we try to rake up all the, basically what they do is they eat the tops of the brambles and the leaves and stuff. So then we go in there with a brush cutter, we cut it down, rake it up, and put a bunch of it on top of rotten wood, and we make small scale hugel mounds.
Take the wood that's there. Take all the wood that's in this area that the loggers left and slashed.
Right, yeah, and that's pretty rotten at this point. Some of it's still decent for firewood. As you can see, there's a couple pieces bucked up there. But this piece right there is, like, you know, spongy, which is great for hugelkultur. If you don't know what hugelkultur is, stay tuned. We'll talk about that in a future video very soon. But yeah, this is a pretty cool way to clear our land. Not that we're trying to knock down the forest, but the loggers pretty much did that, and we're trying to clear out all the underbrush that's not really invasive, but we can't move in there. So the goats have been doing a great job doing that.